1, 2, 3, 4, PreCure 5! Yes, PreCure 5, GoGo! Alright, fine, here we go. Before we get started, I do want to give a quick content warning at the top here. This video will contain discussions of pedophilia and teacher-student relationships. Unfortunately, wherever you stand in your opinions on these two seasons, it's next to impossible to talk about them without those subjects coming up. I will try to contain all discussion of them to a specific section with an extra warning before it actually comes up, but if those are subjects you can't handle discussion of, this is your warning. Okay? Okay. Let's get this over with. This is Yes 5 and GoGo. Yes PreCure 5 was yet another attempt to revive the PreCure series, this time by eschewing the duo format and going with a group of 5. It was moderately successful, garnering it a sequel, Yes PreCure 5 GoGo, but it still wasn't as popular as Futariwa. We'll get into that a little more with the next series, Fresh PreCure, but yeah, that's about what my knowledge of this one was going in. I also knew a handful of other fun facts. For example, I knew that this was the last PreCure series to get a direct sequel, which is a little sad. I liked Max Heart. And there are some series that I would have loved to see more from, but I also get the decision. Neither Max Heart nor GoGo were as popular as their respective prequel series. Yes 5 and GoGo are incredibly polarizing series in the fandom. In my experience, you either love them or you hate them. There doesn't seem to be much middle ground. Also, another cool thing that I knew is that in some PreCure series, there are Cure mascot romantic relationships. I can't remember how I knew that. I think it was from a live blogger I used to follow, but I knew that was a thing, I just didn't know which series that happened in. I remember being incredibly put off by the concept when I first learned about it. Anyway, sorry for bringing that up for no particular reason. Let's move on. This is also the first series where I get to talk about sub-issues. So the first few seasons I was watching on a definitely legal website, wink, and they were all by the same fan sub team. I think it was R&I fan subs, but I'm not totally sure on that. Anyway, as fan subs go, they were pretty good. I didn't have any issues with them, and they color coordinated the subtitles depending on who was talking, which was really helpful for me. I have a pretty hard time recognizing voices. Like, I considered myself a Trekkie for a long time, but I didn't recognize Leonard Nimoy as Master Xehanort in Kingdom Hearts until it was pointed out to me. It's even worse for me in languages I don't speak, which is every language besides English. Partway through, though, the site switched translators, and they didn't color code the subtitles anymore. That was pretty frustrating. It's by far not the worst sub-issue I've experienced so far, just wait until we hit Go Princess, but it's worth noting since it was my first issue with a different fan sub-team. Yes PreCure 5 is about 5 middle school girls. We've got Nozomi, Rin, Urara, Komachi, and Karen. No, not that Karen, this Karen. They become PreCure after meeting Coco, Prince of the Palmier Kingdom, and eventually Nuts, another prince, who ask them to help catch the 55 Pinkies to grant a wish and restore the Palmier Kingdom. No, I don't know why they're called Pinkies. Most of them aren't even pink. The series is mostly about the girls living their day-to-day lives, hanging out at the jewelry shop Nuts opens, getting involved in random bullshit, and fighting off monsters called Kawaii sent by the evil company Nightmare. Well, okay, so in both Futariwa and Splash Star, the main reason the girls couldn't do anything productive was because they could never get to the bad guys to fight them directly, and the bad guys were in direct possession of the series' collectibles. So they couldn't go out and just find the collectibles, they had to wait around for the bad guys to come mess with them so they could beat them up and take their Prism Stone or Miracle Drop. In this series, however, the Pinkies are just dicking around in plain view, and very rarely do they devote any time on screen to actually looking for them. It makes it feel like the Pinkie hunt, ostensibly the main plot, doesn't actually matter that much. Max Heart had this issue too with the Heartiels, but with that one it felt like less of an issue since they actually did devote time to finding the Heartiels, and there were only 12 of them, so they got to be distinct characters. With the Pinkies, it feels more like a game of Pokemon Go that the characters only sometimes remember they're playing. I will say that I do absolutely love that the main villain group for this season is set up like a soul-crushing corporate office, and the various bad guys are basically different parts of the company. The real villain was truly capitalism all along. Once again, around the midway point, we're introduced to another mascot that grants them their mid-season power-up. This series gives us milk, because when you combine the mascots' names, you get coconut milk from the Palmier Kingdom. This series thinks it's clever. Some of my favorite episodes include... Well, there has to be something. Oh, I like any parts about Masakomika that don't involve nuts, and any Komachi-centric episodes that don't involve nuts, and of course the one where Milk gets sick and Karen nurses her back to health. That's probably my favorite out of both these seasons combined. That's about it, though. After Yes 5 finished up, we got the sequel, GoGo. Like Max Heart before, it picks up almost directly after the end of the previous series. Unlike Max Heart, though, even though a full calendar year has gone by both in and out of universe, everyone is still the same grade they were in the first series. My guess is that it was easier to age the characters up a year in Max Heart because Nagisa and Honoka were still in middle school after the increase. In GoGo, though, Karen and Komachi would be in their first year of high school instead, and therefore not in the same school as everyone anymore. Since that was a big conceit of the series, I can kind of understand why they want to avoid that. However, it does mean I get to use this image again, so here we are. Also, it's kind of hilarious in hindsight, since we definitely got Cures going to different schools, as well as high school Cures in later seasons. There are several major changes made for GoGo, though, even if we're just quietly ignoring all the grade changes and graduations. First of all, since Nightmare is gone completely now after the ending of Yes 5 that we'll talk about later, there's a new villain squad in town. Eternal, an evil museum headed up by the incredibly named Kancho, or Boss. We got cool villain names for a couple seasons with Akudai-kan and Desperaya, and now we're back on the Dark King's level with Boss. Yes, I'm aware that Akudai-kan basically means evil shogunate. It's still better than Boss. The PreCure get their powers back to stop Eternal and rescue Flora in the Cure Rose Garden. They also meet a new mascot named Syrup, who is a bird boy who runs an interdimensional mail delivery service with his little Pokemon mailbox friend. That makes him sound way more interesting than he actually is. A big part of GoGo is the question of where the Cure Rose Garden actually is, along with Syrup's identity and involvement in all this. There's also the fact that the kingdoms surrounding Palmier have all been decimated and their rulers are missing, so now the Cures have to find them in addition to everything else, because unless all 4 of them are found, they won't be able to get to the Cure Rose Garden. There's a lot happening in this one. The biggest change to the status quo that GoGo brings, though, is the introduction of Milky Rose, aka Kurumi, aka Milk. Yes, Milk gets to take a human form and become a magical girl in this series. Good for her. Just like the last season, despite there ostensibly being a lot going on, there are a lot of filler episodes where they're just kind of goofing around and not advancing the plot. It definitely felt like there was more plot stuff in this season, though, probably because there's more going on and therefore more to do. Like, even an episode that's mostly just character stuff with Syrup is advancing the what's the deal with Syrup plot beat. Some of my favorite episodes include the one where Komachi plays detective for no reason, always a favorite stock plot of mine. Anything with Bunbi, especially the episode where he goes to the PreCure and demands to become their leader. I think that's it. When I was making the Splash Star video, I did things differently than the first one. With the Futariwa Max Heart video, I drew all the art and then wrote and recorded the script. For Splash Star, I did the opposite, and I feel like the outfit section of the video suffered because of it. After drawing the characters, I found I had new insights into their designs that I wasn't really able to share properly because I refused to record and rearrange the stuff I'd already done. For this video, I went back to the way I originally did it, drawing the characters before writing this section of the script, and I feel like it really helped me get a better grip on my opinions of the character designs. That's not really here nor there, it's just something I wanted to share with you all because I think it's interesting. So to start this part off proper, I generally prefer the GoGo outfits to the original Yes 5 ones. They really feel like upgraded versions of the old outfits, and I love the jackets. I don't love how much white the original outfits have. As a general rule, I prefer magical girl outfits use white as an accent, not the main color, unless white is supposed to be their theme color like Cure White or Princess Tutu. To me, the theme color should be the most prominent color of any magical girl outfit. I think that's one reason I found Cure Bright's design so frustrating in Splash Star. It completely changed her theme color from pink to yellow-green, while Mai's color stayed mostly the same from Egret to Windy. Anyway, all that being said, the outfits in Yes 5 aren't necessarily bad per se. I will say that I generally enjoyed drawing them more than the GoGo outfits, even though I like the GoGo outfits more. They're cute enough, even if they are kind of boring. Something I noticed though while I was drawing them, they didn't They didn't make it so that the outfits had variation based on the characters' ages, right? Like, Dream and Rouge both have a lot of similarities in their outfits, and same with Aqua and Mint, and Lemonade, the only first year, has a completely unique outfit. It wasn't based on year, right? That'd be insane, right? I have to be overthinking it. Unfortunately, these seasons say goodbye to the chunky shoes and leg warmers from the first 3 seasons. They're not gone forever, but it'll be a while before we see them again. They did keep the arm warmer sleeve thingies though, which is nice. This time they all have butterfly accents, except Milky Rose, who has flowers. That's fitting here though. They're supposed to look like a team, and butterflies are a whole thing this season. Also, they all have shorts under their outfits, which, as I established before, I always love. God, the hair though. They're all relatively normal in their base forms, except Komachi, who has... I don't even know what to call this. And then when they transform, things get weird. Dream's hair isn't too bad, and Rouge just looks like a Super Saiyan, which I suppose I can't complain about. Even Karen's is fine, even if it's a little weird that her ponytail is all separated like that, and same with Milky Rose. No, it's Mint and Lemonade whose hair I have the most grievance with. What is this? What are these? Why does their hair look like that? I hate it! Another complaint I have is that the outfits are all very... samey. Like, while I was drawing them, there was a part of me that felt like I was just drawing different people wearing the same outfit over and over. That was mitigated somewhat by alternating between the Yes 5 and GoGo outfits, but the sentiment still stands. It does a good job of making them all look like a team, yes, but something that I've always liked about PreCure outfits is how different they all are. I know the intent is to make them look more uniform, since this is the first season with a full team instead of a pair of girlfriends and possibly a +1, but it's just not to my taste. Then, of course, there's Milky Rose, who looks completely different from the rest of the characters in GoGo. Whether that's a good thing or not depends largely on who you ask, and I've gone back and forth on my answer for hours. On the one hand, it's all white again, which I just established I don't care for. On the other hand, it makes her stand out from the others, which makes sense since she's the only one who gets her power from the blue rose instead of the red rose. But also, she doesn't look like she has anything to do with the rest of the team, who are all specifically designed to look like a cohesive unit. But then again, she's a Season 2 addition who doesn't even show up until a few episodes in, so it makes sense that she looks different. However, yeah, you see what I mean. I honestly can't make up my mind over her outfit. In Max Heart, it was fine that Shiny Luminous looked different from Black and White because they didn't have matching outfits in the first place, so I didn't have this issue. With Milky Rose, though, it's a whole different ballgame. Side note, a cool thing I noticed while I was drawing her that I didn't notice in the show is that her headdress combined with her hairline makes a little butterfly. I'm sure I'm not the first person to notice that or point it out. I just think it's neat, and it shows just how much thought was put into these character designs even if they don't gel with me personally. The character designer for Yes 5 and GoGo also did the designs for Smile PreCure and Hugto PreCure, and recently an art book came out about them. I'd love to get my hands on it and see her design process, but also it's like $80 and shipping to Canada is expensive as hell. The transformations in these seasons are a fair bit shorter than most other seasons, but I think that can largely be explained away by this being the most transformations they'd had in a season thus far. In fact, very few PreCure teams have 6 members total. It's this one and Kira Pre, and that's it. So I'd bet they were trying to make sure they'd always have space for the full transformations by keeping them nice and short. Unfortunately, they're also kind of boring. In the first season, they kept it so that the pieces of their outfit appeared 1 or 2 at a time, which I've established is my preference for transformation sequences. The thing is, they don't move. They just stand there. There's not even really much camera movement to give the illusion of movement except in Lemonade's transformation, and even then only a little. It just makes the sequence seem kind of flat. Black and White's original transformation also had them just standing there, but the difference, I think, is that we were following the transformation across Black to White, and they also had to fly, I guess, to get to the transformation space. GoGo adds the movement back in, which is great, but we're also back to almost the entire outfit appearing at once. Dream and Rouge get to show off their arm warmers before the rest of the transformation just happens, and Mint and Aqua don't get anything, they just spin a bit and get transformed all at once. Again, Lemonade is the standout here, with the most movement and the most pieces appearing individually. I have to wonder if she was some key animator's favorite or something. Milky Rose gets the transformation closest to my taste, with actual movement and spinning and parts appearing bit by bit, which is unfortunate, because it's Milky Rose. Anyway, I'm going to close out this section with a quick note about transformation devices. I haven't talked much about them in previous videos because I didn't have much to say. The original series had little flip phone things, and so did Splash Star until midway through when they became, wands? I'm not sure what they are supposed to be. Then with Yes 5 we got wristwatches. I love wristwatches as transformation devices. I think they're underutilized in Magical Girl series. I like that the beginning of the sequence is drawing a circle in the air with the watch that turns into the outfit. Watches and bracelets as transformation devices are cool, and yes, I'm biased because I've used that in my own work. What about it? Then they go back to flip phone things in GoGo, and I lose all interest. This might wind up being a much shorter section because I just don't really care for any of the openings or endings this time around. This is the only video where I have two distinct openings to discuss. Max Heart just used a cover of Futariwa's theme, but GoGo got its own new theme song. PreCure 5's Smile GoGo is the first opening, and it's peppy and fun. The sequence gives us a brief glimpse at our main cast and what each of them is about, though I do think it's funny that the only thing it really has to say for Nozomi is, uh-oh, she's late! Like being late for the bus is a defining character trait. I mean, it kind of is, but more on that later. I like the counting motif really hammering home the season gimmick of there are 5 of them now. All in all, it's fine, but I like the other two openings we have so far better. PreCure 5 Full Throttle GoGo, on the other hand, is also fine. I actually heard this song before the first one on an 8-Tracks playlist of all places. Remember 8-Tracks? Yeah. I think I prefer Smile over Full Throttle, but like with Milky Rose's character design, I've gone back and forth on that a few times. I like the part in Full Throttle where we could see the PreCure in different media, like ad spaces on trains and in newspapers. Other than that, it's kind of lackluster, but like with the Max Heart version of Danzen, it's the song that will get used to represent both seasons until the end of time, I guess. Smile GoGo is the first time we get the main cast singing a version of the opening theme, which is very cool. That wouldn't happen again for a few seasons. As for end themes, both seasons have 2. Like I mentioned last time, Gambalance to Dance from Splash Star also gets used as the second ED for both Yes 5 and GoGo, though with slightly changed lyrics. The Splash Star version made direct reference to flowers and birds, and since those weren't the motifs for Yes 5, they just changed them up a bit. Again, Gambalance to Dance isn't one of my favorites, but I do think it's neat that it got used 3 times. All 3 versions even have variations on the same choreography. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the origin of the dance ending that we'd see become standard for PreCure starting next season. It's definitely the sort of thing that I could see kids dancing along to at home after every episode. Also, the final version of Gambalance was sung by Cure Quartet, composed of Mayumi Gojo, Kanako Miyamoto, Yuka Uchiyai, and Mayu Kudo. Mayumi Gojo sang the openings and all 3 endings for Futariwa and Max Heart, as well as both endings for Splash Star. Yuka Uchiyai sang the opening for Splash Star, Mayu Kudo sang the openings for both Yes 5 and GoGo, and Kanako Miyamoto sang the end themes for Yes 5 and GoGo. It just feels nice to have the 4 of them sing the last ED for this era of PreCure. They also do a version of Smile GoGo on one of the CDs. Alright, so what about the other 2? Yes 5's first ending is So Sparkle My True Love, and it's boring, I'm sorry, it's really boring. I don't like the singer's voice, which is weird because Kanako Miyamoto does both this song and the version of Gambalance to Dance for this season, and I don't mind it in Gambalance. But aside from that, the song is just not interesting, and the visuals are mostly static images of the cures and mascots with occasional short, flat animations of walking or getting out of bed or something. Like, I don't need to be overwhelmed by the visual quality of the endings or anything, but it just wasn't interesting to watch. Unfortunately, it doesn't get much better for GoGo. Connecting Our Hands Also Links Our Hearts is also kinda boring. The visuals are more interesting, but it's not fun to listen to. Maybe it really is just Kanako Miyamoto's voice. Sorry, ma'am, but I skipped all of them. Quick editing note here. I realized while I was in the process of putting this video together that Kanako Miyamoto actually does a lot of other music later on for PreCure, some of which I actually really like, including Shooby Dooby Sweets Time from Kira Pre, which is one of my favorite anime EDs of all time. So I honestly have no idea why I don't like these ones. Maybe her voice just gets better as time goes on, or maybe the songs just suck, I don't know. But I can't stand these ones, but I like her later work. I don't know. Is that normal? Alright. This is the part where I start to get mean. I don't like any of these people. I'm sure I haven't exactly been subtle about it in this video, but yeah, I fucking hate everyone in this show with a handful of exceptions. Let's start with the main girls. So fucking Nozomi, right? This bitch has nothing going for her. Like, on the one hand, the whole point of Nozomi as a character is that she's kinda ditzy and flighty and doesn't have any real skills, and that's part of her character arc. But on the other hand, she is the dumbest bitch alive, and she's bad at everything, and that never changes. She's stupid, clumsy, overbearing, and obnoxious, and those are all supposed to be her endearing character traits. Nozomi is the worst PreCure protagonist, bar none. I can't fucking stand her. The others are marginally better, for the most part. Some of them have depth, even. Rin is the sporty one, to the point where she helps out every team at school without actually joining any because she wouldn't have time to help the others. She's also into making jewelry and accessories, and is something of a romantic, with several crushes throughout the series. Of all of them, she's probably my favorite, but even then, it's mostly because I'm naturally drawn to tomboy characters, and I feel the need to protect her from stuff. We'll get into it in a bit. Let's get through the rest of this section first. Urara's thing is wanting to be an actress. She has some neat character stuff with regards to her career, like in the episode where she debuts as a singer and is worried it will mess with her acting prospects, since acting was what she really wants. Unfortunately, most of her interesting stuff has to do with her backstory and her relationship with Syrup. Other than that, she's basically just Nozomi 2.0, but not as totally useless. Komachi is honestly a pretty decent character, or would be if they'd stopped focusing so much of her screen time on her relationship with Nuts. She's sweet, quiet, traditional, and down-to-earth, except when she gets really passionate about something, usually to do with writing or stories. She has a goofy side to her, which is kind of fun, and her relationship with Karen is one of the more interesting and believable friendships in Yes 5. There's some stuff I wish they'd done with her that never really went anywhere. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about the movies, but in the Yes 5 movie, where they're fighting Dark PreCure, her whole thing with her dark reflection is that she can't do anything by herself because her only skills are protection. She doesn't have any magical attacks, so she can't actually finish off any of their opponents. She always needs someone else to help her. And I'm mad that we didn't get any of that in the show itself. That's what I really wanted Komachi's character arc to be, and we got none of it. Not in Yes 5, not in GoGo. It just kept pushing her relationship with fucking Nuts! Ah! Karen's fine as a character. At least she doesn't have much romantic bullshit for me to have to wade through. Like I mentioned before, the episode where she nurses Milk back to health is my favorite episode out of both seasons. My only real issue with her is that I just don't find her very interesting. I think PreCure does her character archetype better in later seasons. The most interesting thing about her is her relationship with her butler, but then again, that's probably just because I'm always a slut for platonic caretaker-charge relationships. Speaking of caretakers, great transition, I'm a genius, let's talk about mascots. There are technically 5 in these seasons if we count Mailpo, and for the most part, they suck too. Mailpo is basically nothing, it barely even counts as a mascot. It's a little sentient mailbox thing that Syrup uses to deliver mail and is basically Syrup's only friend at the start of GoGo. That's it, its function is Syrup's Pokemon best friend. Moving on. Coco is the first mascot we meet, and definitely one of my least favorite characters in all of PreCure. First of all, his fucking voice in his mascot form is so grating. Like, as a human, he sounds fine. Why couldn't they have just kept that voice for his mascot form? That's probably one of his least serious offenses though. He's also just kind of a creep. Again, like with Rin, I'll get into this in a bit, but I'm just gonna lay it out there that in his human form, he poses as a teacher at Saint Lumiere, the school they all attend. That, in itself, wouldn't be a bad thing and could lead to some fun, wacky shenanigans if not for all the other stuff. Nuts also sucks for similar reasons to Coco. His voice is also annoying in mascot form, though in my opinion not nearly as bad as Coco's. Unlike Coco though, whose main personality is generally pleasant and kind of a pushover, Nuts' personality is a giant dick to everyone all the time no matter what. Like, okay, so he and Coco are supposed to contrast, right? The whole point of their characters, aside from being mascots, is to play off each other. They grew up together as nebulous childhood best friends, and they're supposed to have something of a good mascot, bad mascot dynamic, with Coco as the good mascot and Nuts as the bad mascot. Unfortunately, I fucking hate both of them because Coco's constant positivity and passiveness is annoying, and Nuts is, like I mentioned, just generally rude and snappish to everybody around him, even to kids, which might I remind you, all the other characters are. Then there's Milk. As I mentioned earlier, she shows up midway through season 1 to be a character foil for Nozomi, to take care of Coco and Nuts, because she's an apprentice caretaker back in the Palmier Kingdom who somehow escaped what happened to everyone else, and she's here now. Great. Okay, yeah, as much as I hate Coco and Nuts, Milk is the absolute worst. She's a giant asshole whose main hobbies are being a bitch, scamming people, talking down to others, and having no character growth. The main person she's awful to is Nozomi, which you would think would make me like her, but no, she is worse than Nozomi. Like I said, she's supposed to be a character foil for Nozomi, so instead of being clumsy and bad at everything and literally the dumbest person alive, she's marginally better than Nozomi at basically everything and is insufferably smug about it the whole time. The Smoke Tsundere girl is one of my absolute least favorite anime tropes, right up there with the character whose whole personality is being a pervert, so you can imagine I fucking hated Milk right away. And the kicker is that she never gets any better! Even after she becomes Kurumi and starts hanging out with everyone and going to school and stuff in GoGo, she's still insufferable and shitty. The one saving grace she has is her relationship with Karen. After the episode where Karen takes care of Milk while she's sick, they actually have a very sweet relationship. You really get the sense that Milk looks up to Karen, and she's one of the only people Milk actually respects besides Coco and Nuts. There's a whole thing in the third All-Stars movie where the Cures all discover that in order to defeat the ultimate evil, or whatever, they'll have to say goodbye to their mascots forever. I, being the savvy adult moviegoer that I am, went, yeah, right, they'll never do that, and wasn't really affected until Milky Rose turned back into her mascot form, jumped into Karen's arms, and started sobbing. I'll admit, that hit me somewhere soft. Finally, we get to Syrup, the only mascot in these seasons I kind of liked. I was intrigued by his whole story of how he lost his memory but was somehow connected to the Cure Rose Garden, about how he used to work for Eternal and now was scared of being forced back to work for them again. He doesn't like Coco, which endeared him to me immediately. His airplane form is a little weird, but I'll allow it. I like his friendship with Urara too. That actually helped make me like Urara a little more as well, though I still don't really like her. Alright, we have 2 sets of villains this time. Unfortunately, for the most part, none of them really stood out to me. Nightmare is led by Desperaya, who wants to collect the Pinkies to wish for eternal life and cast the world into despair because that's what she wants. Again, these early big bads aren't exactly super complex. She's actually the first female big bad in PreCure. We stan a girl boss, I guess? Honestly, Desperaya is not all that exciting. She doesn't show up much, even less than the Dark King and Akudaiken, and we see her second-in-command Kawarino more often than we see her. Kawarino is properly creepy with that always-on smile and all that. He's your typically fanatically loyal right-hand man, though. In the rest of Nightmare, we have Girinma, Gamao, Arachnia, Bunbi, Hadenya, and Bloody. Bunbi is in charge of Girinma, Gamao, and Arachnia, and for the first part of the series, it seems like he's way more in charge than he actually is, until Kawarino shows up and starts putting pressure on him for results. He's actually the only one I really had any opinion on, and thankfully that opinion is positive. I liked Bunbi. I was kinda sad when Kawarino killed him. Again, I do like how Nightmare is set up with the aesthetics of an evil company, with most of their evil meetings taking place in a boardroom full of masked, emotionless people. A nice touch. Then in GoGo, we got Boss and Eternal. Boss, like I mentioned, is a collector. His whole deal is that he wants to perfect his collection of rare and powerful artifacts, animals, and even people, preserving them forever and making it so no one else can have them. I have some thoughts on real-life museums and how they should be giving back all the artifacts they have that were stolen from various cultures in the name of archaeology, so it pleased me greatly to see the villain showcase the more insidious nature of museums. I want to be very clear here. When done right, a museum can be a great force for good. Growing up, my family went to museums all the time, especially in the Ottawa area. I've been to museums that were essentially old houses that were donated to the city by the owners and done up in a way to showcase and educate people about life in the time period when the house was built. I've been to museums that are less museums and more recreations of old towns, filled with actors and guides who tell you all about the life there when it was a real town. I've been to museums with models and recreations and life-sized whale skeletons hanging from the ceiling, and interactive exhibits about how trains work, and the science of superheroes and Star Trek, and all of these things are completely ethical and so much fun to experience. I love museums. I do not love when museums fucking steal from people and cultures and then refuse to give the stuff back. There is no reason in our modern world that museums can't be filled with recreations and we can just put everything back where it came from. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now. Eternal showcases the evil side of museums and I love that. Moving on. Boss himself is a bitch-ass incel. On the one hand, he's fine as a villain. He's honestly pretty different from the other villains we've had before, who all had kind of nebulous and vague reasons for doing what they did. They were just evil because they were evil. Boss is evil because he's selfish and greedy more than anything. He wants everything all for himself, fuck everybody else. The incel part, though, is that he fell in love with Flora, the big good, and threw a giant hissy fit when she didn't return his feelings. He tried to take over / destroy the Cure Rose Garden, which, that wasn't exactly going to make her like you, dude. And she had to seal it away in order to lock him out, which is pretty much where our story picks up. But yeah, despite that, he's still more interesting than any other main villain we've had so far, and so that earns him some points from me. The underlings at Eternal are Boss's right-hand spider lady Anacondi, along with Scorp, Nabatakos, Isogin, Yadokan, Shibireta, Mukardia, and Bunbi! Yes, my boy Bunbi is back, having miraculously survived the time Powerino tried to push him off a roof. Again, he's my favorite in this series, especially his relationship with Scorp. He's the only one who cares when Scorp dies, and that kind of kickstarts his eventual change of heart, realizing that no one in either Nightmare or Eternal ever really cared about anyone below them. By the end of the series, he's actively helping the Cures, and eventually he gets to open his own business. Good for him. Like Urara, I have to wonder if he was someone's favorite, and that's why he was allowed to survive into the sequel. Or maybe it was a Vegeta situation, where he was so popular with the fans that they just couldn't totally kill him off. Damn if I know. I wasn't the Japanese first grader in 2008. As for the rest of them, honestly, I don't remember much about any of them. I remember Shibireta's whole thing being trapping the girls in various fairy tales and other famous stories like Pinocchio and Princess Kaguya, but only mostly because she's really similar to Majorina in Smile PreCure, who was much more memorable, at least for me. I also, unfortunately, remember Mukardia. His shtick is that he turns into a hot guy to get close to the Cures, and tries to beat them with underhanded tactics that way. I hate him. The rest of them aren't really memorable to me, and I didn't really give a shit about most of them. There aren't as many side characters this time around. I know I didn't really talk about them much in the last 2 videos either, but there really were a bunch of semi-regular side characters in Futariwa, Max Heart, and Splash Star. I just didn't have much to say about any of them. In Yes 5 and GoGo, there aren't as many. I'd bet that's a side product of having more main characters. Because there are 5, later 6 magical girls instead of 2 or 3, there's less room for non-magical girl characters. To be frank, I prefer some of the side characters to the main ones at this point. Karen's butler, Sakamoto, is one of my favorites because he's an archetype that I just can't get enough of, the unrelated parent figure. Always smiling, wanting nothing more than his not-daughter's happiness. PreCure loves this specific trope, and I am so grateful for it. Then there's Miko Masuko, or Masukomika, which is a portmanteau of her name that's meant to sound like a Japanese slang term for mass media, masakomi, or mass communication. She's always trying to get a big scoop for the school paper, of which she is the only staff member for a while. I adore her. Again, very specific character trope that I love, that being the ineffectual paparazzo with a good heart. She pops up several times trying to figure out the Cure's secret identities, and she tries to interview Arachnia while being held hostage, and she deserved better, that's all. And, last one, the school lunch lady, Mrs. Otaka. She floats around in the background every so often while the girls are eating lunch at school, offering advice, and generally being kind and helpful. Later on in the series, it turns out she's also the school principal, who no one has met, and she explains that she keeps it that way because people are more likely to tell the lunch lady their problems than the principal, because the lunch lady seems more on their level. I like that. I mean, there's absolutely no way that could ever work in real life, at least not in my experience, but I like it, it's sweet. Honorable shoutouts go to Urara's dad, grandpa, and manager. They were always fun when they showed up. Okay, it's time to get mean again. We're going to talk about the Discourse. Alright, so this is the section where we're going to discuss the aforementioned pedophilia and teacher-student relationships. If you don't want to hear about that, skip this chapter and go straight on to the next one. If you aren't specifically triggered by those subjects, though, I'd really encourage you to stick around and listen, because it's going to put a lot of what I have to say about these seasons into context. The main reason Yes5 and GoGo are so divisive among PreCure fans is Nozomi and Coco's relationship. The series literally begins with a meet-cute between them. Nozomi is running late for school, something she does often because she can't do anything right, and sees a butterfly. Despite being, late for school, she decides to follow it into an alleyway and literally runs into a handsome young man. They have some inane small talk about butterflies, and then he runs off and disappears, leaving her to wonder where he went. We later learn he is the season mascot, Coco, and Nozomi becomes a PreCure to help save him, and she decides her new dream is to help Coco save the Palmier Kingdom. All of this is fine and normal and fairly standard to PreCure so far, right? Well, no, because unlike the previous seasons, Nozomi very explicitly has a thing for Coco's human form. Coco, who is made to look several years older than Nozomi in his human form, but who spends a lot of his time looking like a marketable Fox plushie. Coco is an adult, and we know Coco is an adult from episode 2, when he becomes Nozomi's new teacher. So not only is he an adult, he's an adult in a very explicit position of authority over her. Teachers should not date their students, period. And I'm not going to argue with you about whether or not it's okay if they're both adults, like a college student and their professor. Okay, so don't even get started on that. The point is that if Nozomi had a crush on Coco and it never went anywhere more than that, that would be fine. Or at least fine-ish. I would really prefer if media stopped pushing having a crush on your teacher on young girls, but it does happen, I won't deny that. I never did, but that's probably because I was a wee baby lesbian who hadn't figured it out yet, and also I was madly in love with Ryobakura from Yu-Gi-Oh! Instead. Anyway, it would be one thing if Nozomi had a thing for Coco, but not the other way around. But of course, that's not what happened, or we wouldn't have a whole section titled The Discourse. Actually, that's not entirely true. Anyway, no, it's not what happened. Nozomi's feelings for Coco are very, very reciprocated, and it's the main reason I can't stand Coco. Their relationship is confirmed to be romantic multiple times by the narrative. They dance together. Nozomi gets jealous of other girls giving Coco love letters. Nozomi and Kurumi, who is also explicitly confirmed to be a middle schooler, fight over Coco's affections. There's a scene early on, in episode 3 or 4, I think, where Coco turns into a human to try and wake Nozomi up, and Nozomi's mom walks in on this scene where an adult man is leaning over Nozomi while she's in bed and is treated like this wacky happenstance instead of like her mom calling the cops or something, approaching a reasonable reaction to finding an adult man in her teenage daughter's bedroom. Coco straight up confirms that Nozomi's feelings are returned in the aforementioned love letter episode. He rejects the advances of another mascot woman his age because he likes Nozomi. They even have the first on-screen canon kiss in one of the fucking movies. All while Nozomi is a middle school student and Coco is her fucking teacher. I just can't. Are you fucking kidding me with this? There are people who defend this relationship, saying that any power or dominance Coco has over Nozomi by virtue of being an adult and her teacher is cancelled out by the fact that she has power over him by the nature of the cure-mascot relationship. That's not how that works at all. Whether Coco is in human or fox form doesn't change the fact that he is an adult and her teacher. Any romance that comes during this period in time is inherently unhealthy and yikes-inducing because he's an adult and she's 14. Look, I have very strong feelings about this because I work at an elementary school and have for years. If I ever found out that any of my colleagues, I don't care how fresh-faced out of high school they are, if I ever found out that any of my colleagues were dating or at least flirting with any of our grade 8 students or younger, God forbid, I'd be running to the principal and the union before you could blink. I live in fear of that happening someday, of some poor kid that I know getting abused by their teacher. So teacher-student relationships are something of a sensitive issue for me. I hate them more than almost anything, and to see it pushed as a healthy romance in a show meant for little kids is repulsive. The thing is, though, that it's not just this one-off thing. It's not even just Nozomi and Coco's relationship that has all this gross-ass pedophilia, because that's what it is all over the place. It's the main one, and it's certainly the big thing that everyone talks about, but it's not just that. Let's talk about Nuts. So Nuts is also ostensibly a hot guy in his human form. My taste in men, such as it is, tends to be more on the beefy side, so I don't really see it. In fact, I think he and Coco both look really generic in their human forms, but the story really wants you to believe that they're super attractive guys. Bishonen, if you will. The series leans into this hard, and poor Masakomika suffers for it. Like, there's an episode early on where they're trying to drum up business for Nuts' jewelry shop. Masakomika shows up, and after meeting Nuts, she writes an article for the school paper about the hot guy in town and his store, after which his shop is swarmed with thirsty middle school girls. Thanks, I hate it. Nuts also uses the fact that Masakomika has a crush on him to manipulate her. Granted, he doesn't make her do anything particularly bad, it's generally just to distract her from her goal of unmasking the PreCure. Still, it's gross of an adult to manipulate a child's known romantic feelings to make her do what he wants. Like, we can all agree that while it's definitely the tamest example here, it's still pretty gross, yeah? The worst for Nuts, though, has to be his relationship with Komachi. They develop a quiet, budding romance partway through, and while thankfully it never gets fully confirmed like with Nozomi and Coco, it's still treated the same as theirs and definitely supposed to be read as romantic. She brings him her novel to read, and he's super rude about it. Like, they talk in the show about how Nuts isn't one to mince words, and he says that she needs to learn how to handle criticism and stuff. But, like, there's a difference between constructive criticism and being such a toxic asshole that you make a middle schooler want to quit their passion entirely, bastard. Somehow, despite this, they become each other's close confidants, which, again, would be completely fine if it didn't turn romantic. But it does. It's mildly less explicitly confirmed than Coco and Nozomi by virtue of them not saying the quiet part out loud or kissing. But that doesn't mean it isn't romantic. Visually and narratively, it's treated exactly the same way as Nozomi and Coco's confirmed romance. Once again, Nuts is an adult. He's around the same age as Coco, maybe older, I don't remember, and Komachi is only a year older than Nozomi. She's still in middle school too. The teacher-student aspect might be gone, but this relationship is still between an adult and a teenage girl. I can't understand why people defend this fucking bullshit! Rule of 3 says I'm not allowed to use that bit anymore in this video. Alright, so people do still talk a bit about Nuts and Komachi and how bad of a relationship that is, though not to nearly the same extent as Nozomi and Coco. It's less prominent in the series, whereas the Nozomi-Coco relationship is front and center at basically all times. This still isn't the end of the adult-child romance shit in this series, though. We still haven't even talked about Rin. Rin is the same age as Nozomi. She's a second-year middle school student. As I mentioned before, she's a bit of a closet romantic. Through both seasons, she has a few crushes on a few different guys, mostly one-off things that don't really go anywhere. And all of those crushes are on adult men. Now, like I said, for the most part, these crushes don't go anywhere. They're crushes and nothing more. But would it have killed them to give Rin some love interests her own age? And the first one we see, where she has a crush on one of the customers of her parents' flower shop, the others all encourage her to shoot her shot. For an adult man! Y'all, that's not okay! Then of course there's fucking Mukardia. Remember how I said he shows up as a handsome man and causes problems for the Cures that way? Yeah, the one hit worst by it is Rin. Karen too, to an extent, but Rin's the one he goes on a fucking date with. Again, an adult. Flirting with 2 middle school girls to manipulate their feelings for him so they'll do what he wants. Why is this a theme? At least here, it's a villain doing it, and it's definitively framed as being a bad thing. And also he dies, that's a huge plus. God, alright, I think that's it for the discourse. I just hope this explains why I'm so hostile towards this series in particular. The second I figured out where Nozomi and Coco's relationship was going, it soured the whole experience for me, and then there was no escape from any of it. It's not even a case of one instance I can just ignore, it permeates the whole series, and these seasons absolutely reek of it. There's actually a lot to Yes 5's ending that I really like. The big showdown with Kawarino was good, and the revelation that the masked, emotionless crowd that we've seen all through the series in Nightmare's corporate office and now at the final battle stadium is actually all the citizens of the Palmier Kingdom? Fucking phenomenal. I loved that. My favorite part, hands down, has to be when Rin and Karen are talking while literally sinking into despair. Rin and Karen are supposed to have a mildly antagonistic rivalry through the series, but for the most part, it really only shows up when the episode's plot demands it, and they otherwise get along fine. However, it does lead to a really great through line of the two of them butting heads while also confiding in each other. In a late game episode, they both confess that, like Nozomi, neither of them has their own actual dream for the future. Rin likes sports, but isn't sure if that's what she wants for the rest of her life, and Karen is a trust fund baby who has grown up so isolated that she has no idea what she wants at all. They wind up making a pact that when one of them figures out what they want, the other will be the first to know. Then, in the final few episodes, when they've all been hit by the depression beam or whatever and are slowly being consumed by despair, Rin notices her bracelet and remembers that she decided she wants to make accessories for a living but never told Karen. So she brings it up quietly, not being able to bring herself to care all that much, and that reminds Karen that she never told Rin she wanted to be a doctor. She tells her about it, and that conversation is eventually what allows everyone to break through and make their triumphant comeback. It's a really nice end to those two character arcs. I just wish the rest of the arc had been written that well. Most of it was just annoying infighting. There's also the fact that the PreCure actually fucking fail. Like, okay, it's your typical Darkest Hour ending, every PreCure series does it. The bad guy has to win temporarily to make the hero's eventual victory all the sweeter. That's like plot and pacing 101. But in Yes 5, Nightmare gets the Dream Colette with all 55 pinkies inside, which has been the whole point of the series even if it rarely seems like it matters. They talk all the time about restoring the Palmier Kingdom, but no one ever gives a shit about the pinkies. There were long stretches where I straight up forgot they existed. And then Desperaya uses the wish it grants, utterly destroying any chance Coco and Nuts had of using it to restore Palmier, since it only works once. I like this, because in the end it means that Coco, Nuts, and Milk go back to the Palmier Kingdom with everyone else, and they decide that they're going to make their dream of restoring the Palmier Kingdom come true with their own hard work instead of relying on wishes. It's nice, honestly, and I really like it. I promise I don't just like it because it means Coco, Nuts, and Milk leave and I don't have to deal with them for a while. I actually really do like that ending. I think the thing that really dungeons my dragons in the end is just how weak of an ending Desperaya gets. She has your typical villainess motivation of, I want to be young and beautiful forever, and then she gets it and she's like, aw, this didn't make me happy after all, better be a good guy now and go seal myself away forever, bye! That's not an exaggeration, that's literally what happens. I hate it. With regards to the rest of the series, I've already talked at length about how I feel about the main plot. In all honesty, I think part of the issues they had with pacing was the increased main cast. Before, they had only 2 or 3 characters they had to focus on for character episodes, with occasional Day in the Limelight style episodes about side characters. Now there are 5 magical girls and 3 mascots, and they all need equal or close to equal time in the spotlight. That problem is only compounded when we hit the sequel and we have 6 magical girls and either 3 or 4 mascots if we count Malpo. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the pacing problems were a direct result from that. The main motifs for these 2 series are butterflies and roses. There doesn't seem to be anything deeper to that, which I'll try not to hold against it. A lot of early PreCure series don't have anything particularly deep or meaningful to say about their motifs. To be honest, I don't think it's until Sweet that the motif, actually matters or ties into the theme. Speaking of themes, the main themes for the first season are hope versus despair and dreams for the future. Theoretically, I love those themes. Hope versus despair is one of my favorites, and Yes 5 handles it alright. I don't think Yes 5's take on it was all that nuanced, or good. The most it really had to say was, we should have hope because hope is good. Wow, thanks. It has more to say about dreams, though. Dreams are a whole big thing in this one, they're brought up constantly. All the main characters have some kind of big aspiration at some point. In Irara and Komachi's cases, they already have them at the beginning, actress and novelist, respectively, and are already working towards them, and that doesn't really change much through either season. Milk, when she shows up, also already has one in mind. She wants to become a great caretaker. For Coco and Nuts, obviously, they want to restore the Palmier Kingdom, and Nozomi latches onto this as well because A, she has a crush on Coco, and B, she doesn't have a dream of her own, so she decides to make her dream align with Coco's until she can find something she wants. I will say, at the end, when she decides she wants to be a teacher, She does become marginally less annoying because she actually has something that she wants for herself instead of just constantly living for the guy she likes. She still sucks though, I don't like her. And I already talked about Rin and Karen's situations. All this carries over into Season 2. In GoGo, we don't really get a new theme. The hope versus despair thing is basically gone, and Eternal seems like it would be all about greed, but it doesn't really do much with that. It's mostly just more stuff about dreams. By this point, it was kind of starting to get old. I think the thing that pisses me off the most about these seasons, though, is that they could have been awesome. Again, I love hope versus despair storylines, and dreams aren't on the same level for me, but they work fine. But the lackluster execution, characters I hate, and boring plot really bogged the whole thing down for me. And you know what sucks? I know that this can be better, because later they used these exact same themes in another PreCure series, and it's one of my all-time favorites. So I know it could have been great, and it wasn't, and that blows! God, I wish these seasons were better. There's a whole episode in GoGo where an actual real-life comedian shows up and plays himself. This is not the last time this happens. I have no idea what to do with this. Nuts' jewelry shop is called Nuts House. Nuts House. Jesus H. Christ. Pretty much every gripe I have with this series, aside from the stuff I talked about in the Discourse earlier, is done better later on. I really do think Yes 5 and GoGo suffered from being the first to change up the formula. Why is everything French in this one? The buildings are French-inspired, one of the cures has a French name, their school has a French name. Like, this does still take place in Japan, right? Santa is there. Santa is canon to the PreCure universe. Again, I have no idea what to do with this. Pure Lemonade's intro speech has her refer to either the bursting scent of fresh lemon or the effervescent scent of lemon, depending on which translator we're talking about. Personally, I prefer effervescent, partly because that's how the fan wiki translates it, but also, saw a magical girl today. Effervescent. Alright, let's wrap up. No, I would not recommend these two seasons. In fact, I would actively warn people against them. They fucking suck, and are the only two seasons so far that I actually hate. There are seasons later on that I'm indifferent towards or don't care for or whatever. But with Yes 5 and GoGo, I can't stand them, and I'm looking forward to never having to think about them again now that this video is over. Thankfully, next time we'll be talking about something completely different. Come back again for Fresh PreCure, the season that saved PreCure.